Hello and welcome to Flying Bobbins. I'm Liz and I've just finished making my beautiful Maison Fauve Pilar jacket. Here's the pattern here. I love Maison Fauve patterns, they are so full of gorgeous details. So as always, I'd like to share with you some top tips, things I learned throughout the make. Now I have done a full video sew along covering all elements of this make. If, however, you are quite happy to just zoom ahead and make this jacket, I wanted to just quickly do a rundown of my top 5 tips for the things that I learned throughout making this jacket that I'd like to share with you. So first of all, this jacket does feature beautiful top stitching. That gives it its authentic denim look. And my top tip for that, as always, is to make a note of your settings. So find a reference point. I use the edge of my foot, of my presser foot, and then that gives me my top stitch positioning. So make a note of all of those, because if this is a project that you're going to make and then come back to a few days later and you're going to be switching between regular sewing and sewing top stitching, then it's quite easy to forget your stitch lengths, your reference points, etc. So always make a note of your top stitch settings. And I actually added bar tacks to the top and bottom of my pockets there, and then I did a bar tack at the cuff, at the sleeve area where you have a split on the sleeve. So once again, there's a bit of time between sewing the bar tacks on the pocket, sewing the bar tacks on the sleeve. So it's a great idea just to make a note of what stitch length and width you use for your bar tacks. Pop them in your instruction booklet so that the next time you come to make this jacket, you already know what works for you. Ditto with the buttonholes actually, because you've got a few buttonholes, for example, on the pockets, at the front. So if you're not doing them all in one go, do make a note of exactly how you do the buttonholes so that they all look consistent. So tip number 2, whilst we're talking about buttonholes and buttons, is to practice, practice, practice. The buttonholes tend to be something that you do more towards the end of the project. So my tip is to buy more buttons than you need and practice hammering them in or using whichever tool you're using to apply your jeans buttons, and also practice the buttonholes. Don't forget on your practice fabric to interface it so that you're replicating the same fabric thickness and quality. So do practice your buttonholes and applying your buttons before moving on to your final jacket. Number 3 actually is to do with the top pockets. So for this jacket, you really want these top pockets to line up. So I would make the left and right front sides of your jacket simultaneously, and whilst you're still in the panel part of the make, just put those 2 panels next to each other and check that these 2 top pockets here are evenly spaced. I also found that in the instructions they say to attach these pocket flaps to the top yoke. I actually found it easier to line them up if I attached the pocket flaps to the front panel and then applied the yoke after. I just found it that I could see where I was a bit more easily. So I constructed the front panels, then I constructed the pocket flaps, lined them up, checked from left to right that they were perfectly symmetrical, and then after that I added the yoke, and I found that sequence easier to make sure that they all line up. For the next tip, I'm going to move on to the sleeves and in particular the cuffs. So I did find that applying the cuffs on the end of these sleeves, I did find the margins for tolerance for adding the cuffs quite tight. So my tip for adding the cuffs would be when you come to sew the ends of the cuff here before you're applying them to the sleeve, I reduced the seam allowance down to a ½ centimetre instead of a centimetre, and then that gave me a lot more room to fit the cuff onto the sleeve opening, and then you just get a little overhang there which allows for your button. And I found just by slightly reducing the seam allowance there on that area, it just gave me a bit more tolerance for attaching the cuff without having to sort of fit the fabric too much. So just once you've made your sleeve and you're going to apply your cuff, just check the fit on the cuff. And if you feel like you're going to have to sort of struggle to fit the cuff onto the sleeve opening, then of course you can just reduce the seam allowance a little to make sure that it fits and you're not having to kind of battle with it at all. Okay, so my final tip is that this is a beautiful classic style denim jacket. I think that there's a couple of great hacks here that would work really well for this jacket. So number one, I think you could definitely make a gilet style out of this, giving the pattern even more versatility than it already has. So when I was in the construction method, I noticed how beautiful it looked without the sleeves. And I think that if we made this jacket without the sleeves, it would make a great gilet. And of course, they are super on trend at the moment. So you would just then need to perhaps bring in the underarm seam a little, try it on for fit, and then you could just finish that armhole with a bound edge or a binding folded to the inside of the garment, and it would look beautiful. If you are going to do that, you might want to consider shortening or omitting the sunray pleats so that they don't come too close to the edge there. But just be wary of that if you're going to go for adapting this to a gilet style. The other hack I would say is this would really make a beautiful cropped jacket as well. So it'd be easy. This sort of sits on the top hip, which is a very classic length for the denim jacket. If you were going to want to make a cropped version, I think it would look really nice too. And I know that sort of these cropped versions of these jackets are really, really popular, especially in spring, summer months. Trying to give you the look there of that sort of slightly shorter length. So if I was going to go for a cropped length jacket like this, I would probably choose not to do the side pockets because it would be quite tricky to fit everything in. So I would just do the chest pockets and not do the side pockets, and then take some length off so this sits on the natural waist and would look extremely flattering over the top of a summer dress. And if I was going to do the cropped style, I'd probably then not do the inverted pleat that we have at the back as well. So those are my top things that I sort of sprung to mind, that I thought of whilst making my Pilar jacket. I absolutely love this make. I'm going to put links below to the Sew Along Club, as I'm featuring this as the Sew Along for the month of April. So you can join in and sew this jacket with me. I'll also put links to the kits that I have available, and of course the patterns as well that are all available from my website. So I hope that's helped you and inspired you for making your Pilar jacket. Good luck with your sewing. I can't wait to see what you make. Please do share. It's a beautiful style, so I encourage you to give it a try. See you next time.